You're joining a live edition of the People's Court. It's Sunday, April 19th, 2015. The regular season over, the playoffs have commenced, and it's time for our end-of-season report, which will include our most memorable moments, the most disappointing teams, a look into the future, and much, much more. Court is now in session.
And now, here are your hosts, Chris, Lamont, and Adam.
And welcome to the People's Court. I am Chris. That right there is Lamont. And filling in for Adam, our good friend Tim. What's going on, fellas?
What's up, man? Coming to you live and direct from our nation's capital.
Back in D.C. looking dapper.
Yeah, man. Broke out the Sunday Whites in honor of our deceased beloved Lakers, maybe.
or how about you just want to show Paul Pierce that you have it.
That could be it, man. That could be it. Yeah.
Before we continue with our end of season report, I have to remind everybody how to get in contact with us. Because if you want to call us, you can. We have a phone line, 424-ADJOURN. That's 424-235-7633. Call us and leave us a message, and maybe we'll play your message on the air. Or you can tweet us at People's Court FM. And again, if you tweet us something sharp, something smart, maybe we'll talk about your tweet on the air as well. And you can visit us on the web, http://thepeoplescourt.fm. It's been an interesting season, as they all are. And so I want to start, guys, by talking about the most memorable moment of the season. Essentially, what would you remember most about 2014-15? So, Lamont, what was your most memorable moment?
I've got two. So we all remember Klay Thompson breaking George Gervin's single quarter scoring record, and he was on fire during that game. And then a couple of weeks ago, he nearly did the same thing when he went on fire again and just couldn't miss. That was like, those shooting displays were unbelievable. And he's not even the best shooter on his own team.
That's crazy.
And then we've talked.
Clay Alert literally became a thing.
Clay Alert literally became a thing. And then my second one was, of course, the always entertaining, sometimes lovable, sometimes upsetting Charles Barkley going on his anti-analytics rant around the All-Star break, around the time, shortly before the time of the Sloan Conference, when he just wanted to, I don't know what his goal was, but his little beef with Daryl Morey. That rant was fun to watch, even if he was entirely wrong during those 5 minutes. But it was great. It was great to watch.
He was completely wrong. Yeah, I don't know how you can justify a lot of the things that he said.
I feel like if Charles Barkley is serious about advancing that argument, he just should spend more time with Jalen Rose. Because I feel like Jalen Rose does a really good job of kind of splitting the difference, of having that former player's perspective that relies a lot on the eyeball test, which is predicated on so many intangibles. But Jalen also seems to have a healthy respect for sort of the new metrics and figuring out like where the space, like where the Venn diagram is that those things can coexist. I think Charles looks at it as disconnected circles.
See, the problem that I have with Barkley's argument is that he always brings up James Harden, right? And he's like, it doesn't take analytics to know that James Harden is a good player. Of course you're going to go and try and get that player. But the thing is, the immediate reaction to James Harden getting traded to Houston and Houston giving him that big extension was, will James Harden be able to be your star? Because he was a sixth man in Oklahoma City. And a lot of people in the media were thinking, okay, with all this attention now on him being the number one option, defense is focused on him. He's not going to have the same impact that he had coming off the bench in Oklahoma City. And what did he do? Screw y'all, I'm going to drop 25 a game, and in my third season in Houston, become an MVP candidate.
Exactly.
So, yeah, it took analytics for Houston to recognize that. Nobody else tried to trade for Harden, did they?
No.
So that's my big beef with Barkley's argument there, is that nobody outside of the analytics community recognized James Harden as a superstar until he became a superstar in Houston.
Yeah.
Precisely.
So, anyways.
You need a gavel, man. You got to get a gavel. So when you get a point like that, bam, like, the case closed.
Done. Tim, what memorable moments did you have for 2014-15?
I had a couple things. One thing was kind of more of a trend that I started thinking about that was best exemplified by Brandon Jennings and Wes Matthews tearing their Achilles. I feel like we've watched defenses become more and more sophisticated to the extent that they forced offenses to become more imaginative. And in the that sort of push and pull that's happening there, I'm wondering if we're at a point where we're past what the human body is actually able to endure. Like that Achilles, like we know people turn their ankles, we know people have blown out knees, like that's a natural thing to expect to have happen. But with these Achilles tears, those just seem so random, and they seem like, I don't understand exactly how the Achilles works, but it seems to me to be something that is freakish and that accumulates after a long stretch of accumulated stresses. It's like, are we going to start seeing more and more of that? That's the thing that really stood out to me this year that I didn't really hear a lot of people talking about, because people obviously talk about the injuries and the impact it has on different teams. But I wonder if we're really at that breaking point where the human body can't endure over the long haul what the modern NBA game asks of it.
That's an interesting point. And the NBA teams, anyway, are really trying to get more into biometrics, to figure out what the body can and can't take. But I think there's a little bit of pushback from the players in the union because they don't want those biometrics to negatively impact their earning potential.
Of course.
Right? So I wonder if we'll see the players eventually agree to the biometrics because just what you're saying, because their bodies are going to start falling apart.
Because you just watch a game and it looks pretty self-explanatory that you see how a series of screens is meant to put a defensive player in a position where he goes this way, then he goes that way, then he goes back, and they know that he might be able to react here, then he can react there, but there's no way he can do this. Like, it's just too much back and forth movement. It just seems like it's in a really extreme kind of stress that our bodies can't really deal with.
Yeah, and that's
for next season. Oh, go ahead, Lamont.
I was gonna say that's even before you account for the fact that we're in the pace and space era, and
of course,
and defensive players like Wes Matthews, that the 3-and-D guys, they have to cover more space.
They do.
It'd be really interesting to look at the sports VU data, the player tracking data, and see how many I guess yards or feet players are running per game, and then compare that to 20 years ago. That would be really interesting to look at. Maybe that's something that the biometrics, should the union agree to it, would tell us.
Yeah. I feel like Anthony Davis is sort of like patient zero for all this. He missed some time last year. I want to say he missed some time the year before that. He missed a little bit of time this year, but not that much. And, given what his game is predicated upon, do we really expect him to be playing when he's 40 the way that Tim Duncan does? Or do we anticipate that maybe he has a shorter career because of the extreme amount of stress that his game requires?
Yeah, Davis is an interesting case. It's something you can ask the same thing of guys like Kevin Durant and LeBron James.
Yep.
LeBron has always, of course, been able to withstand, the most of the rigors of an 82 game season. Although he'll take games off here and there, but he hasn't ever had a major injury
Hmm.
that I can recall. But now we're seeing Durant, who's kind of more the body type of Anthony Davis,
Yep.
kind of fall apart now this season. With all the foot injuries that he's had. So yeah, it's an interesting thing to look at going forward. And Lamont, to your point, the problem is with the sports VU player tracking thing is we can't look at 20 years back because we don't have that information. So maybe we won't know for another 10 years or so when we have enough data accumulated on that information about how much players run during a game. If 10 years from now, if they're running more than they did today.
Yeah. Well, somebody's smart enough to figure it out 20 years ago. Somebody should be smart enough to figure out 20 years ago. There's got to be a way.
Yeah, they're going to all the game tape and then track players through game tape. That'd be pretty interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Can I share one more memorable moment? Because the first memorable thing was a trend, and the second one is a single moment, which is Anthony Davis when he hit that three-pointer over Kevin Durant that basically sealed the fate of those two teams where one gets to go to the playoffs and one doesn't. That was the most astounding game that I saw all year long, and it was also the greatest tragedy because on NBA League Pass it was like 7:59 or something, and it was the one channel for that entire night that never replayed the game. So that game happened, and it was, as far as I know, it wasn't replayed unless NBA TV picked it up. But that was a tremendous game. And if you guys remember it, so Davis had a monster game, Russell Westbrook had a monster game, Tariq Evans had a monster game, and Kevin Durant was the fourth best player on the court. For one night, all of that was true, and it was just phenomenal, man. Amazing, amazing game.
Yeah. Didn't see the game, but saw tons of replays about that shot. Like he had Anthony Davis had a double clutch.
Yep.
In the air, and then shoot it over not only Durant, but I think maybe Anthony Morrow did a quick flyby on him as well. And then the shot goes in, and it's incredible how the seasons for both teams turned on that one shot that he'll never be able to make again.
And he that was the first three he made all season. I mean, I'm not sure how it rates for his career if he's made that many in his career, but that was the first three he made this season. Crazy, man.
Yeah, it's kind of like that Blake Griffin bouncing three-pointer that he made earlier this season against, I can't remember which team now.
Phoenix.
Oh, that's right. Phoenix was the one that had all those crazy endings, and they lost on really, really,
they lost.
what do you call them? Hail Mary shots?
Yeah.
But, my most memorable moment of the season, I have to say, is repeating as a fantasy basketball champion. That's it right there.
The champ is here!
That's right. The champ is here. I'm going to be getting another one of these right here. It's going to say 2014-15.
Champ is here!
Champion.
Good for you.
Champ is here! Champ is here!
Thanks, Tim.
You're welcome, you're welcome. I hope that wasn't too long. I love that song, man. It's one of my top favorites. Congrats,
But
man.
in NBA-specific related memorable moments for me has to be Westbrook and the performance he put on post-All-Star break. Like, he became a triple-double machine. Putting up Oscar Robertson, not just, like Jason Kidd triple-doubles when you get 10 points, 12 assists, 11 rebounds. No, like 33 points, 12 assists, and 11 rebounds. Throwing up monster numbers. And really, we wouldn't even be talking about the battle between New Orleans and Oklahoma City for that 8th spot if it wasn't for that stretch of games where Westbrook was just amazing. So,
Yeah, I was getting ready to lobby for. For a little while there. I wanted to lobby to change stop calling it a triple double, instead call it the Westbrook.
That's great. That is great.
I mean, if you're going to name it after anybody, it's probably going to be Magic Johnson, but he did.
Oscar Robertson, actually. I mean, if you're going to really go there. I mean, I love the Russell Westbrook. Like, that's fantastic.
I think just more current. I'm gonna call it the Westbrook. I think we should just call it the Westbrook.
I'm okay.
I concur.
All due respect to Oscar Robertson and Magic Johnson and Larry Bird and all the players that put up, and LeBron James, all the players that were putting up. No, it was just an amazing stretch. I think we just call it the Westbrook.
Okay.
It kind of made you wonder, like, okay, not to tear down that franchise, but what if Westbrook was the featured player by himself? Like, if he was one superstar and he had, instead of like being an equal weight superstar next to him, a slightly lesser weight. Like, what if, it was Rudy Gay next to him, or there was like some kind of division of labor like Zebo and Marcus Gasol have, like something along those lines, where one guy is clearly a rung or two below the other guy, and that's who Westbrook is running with. Like, what if? Like, what would that team look like? What would they do?
I think we're gonna find out pretty soon.
Oh, that sounds terrible.
Bold predictions coming. Bold predictions.
I think Westbrook. He got uncaged this season, and it's tough to put him back in the cage. And not to say that playing with Kevin Durant is akin to playing in a cage, but you got Westbrook fully unleashed, and it was brilliant to watch. And I don't know if a person with Westbrook's mentality now can go back to playing with Kevin Durant. So we'll find out.
What if this injury to Kevin Durant, like given Kevin Durant's age and this particular injury, what if it's a slow recovery? Like, it takes him a year to get back on the court, and then it takes him another year to get fully healthy, and then he kind of knows who he now is. And what if, in the course of those things, like, he settles into a slightly lower intensity version of himself, so that maybe his usage rate will come down in accordance with that lower intensity style of play. And maybe, what if, like, Kevin Durant 2.0 is actually the perfect complement? I mean, if there is a Kevin Durant 2.0, if that turns out to be true, what if that guy really is the perfect complement for this version of Russell Westbrook?
I'll shed a tear. Because
Why?
Kevin Durant 1.0 is on the trajectory to be in that conversation top 5 player ever.
Okay.
And I don't want to settle for less than that. And what you're saying is that because of the injuries, Kevin Durant never returns to that form, and that'll shed a tear if that happens.
Well, if you think about Jordan, like, there were like basically three versions of Chicago Jordan, right? And they weren't any less potent. They were just they were stylistically a little bit different, and they still achieved the same thing. I mean, their games are different, but, Durant's still a perimeter player. Maybe. I want to be hopeful, man. I don't want to shed tears. I want to be hopeful.
But see, that player is still an MVP candidate.
Okay.
Can Westbrook play with another MVP candidate after the season he just had? That's the question.
I see. I don't know. Yes, I'm going to say yes. Yes, I'm going to root for yes, because those two are great together. Like, I don't want to have a peanut butter sandwich by itself. I want peanut butter and jelly, goddammit.
Do you think Kevin Durant is bitter at all about what transpired this season?
The injuries, yeah. I think he's mad at his body for failing him like that, because I think he put in the work. I think he got good advice as best he could get. Yeah, I think he's mad about that. I don't think he's mad about anything else. That's it.
So you don't think he has any jealousy towards Westbrook at all?
Nah, he loves them dudes.
All right.
Especially that guy. Like, I think that's transparent. I mean, he says
Well,
it.
here's hoping Oklahoma City doesn't do something that could prevent those two from living a long and happy marriage together.
I think they're going to be fine.
Yeah.
I think they're going to be fine.
So let's switch gears here, fella. We just talked about our most memorable moments of the season. So let's talk about teams now. And which team had the most disappointing season? Tim, I'll let you go for this time. Age
Um,
before Peoples.
You're very kind there. But hey, by the way, we didn't acknowledge that you guys played each other in the finals of that fantasy. Like, so we're talking to two essentially like conference champions. Like, so shout out to Lamont as well. Dude, and quiet as kept, I was really rooting for you to unseat your brother. It just didn't work out, man. But I would say in terms of teams that were disappointing, Charlotte. Charlotte was really disappointing. I mean, they were. I just don't know what that franchise is doing. I think they really missed Josh McRoberts more than they anticipated because it looked on paper like Marvin Williams could do a lot of the things he could do, and he just doesn't. Like, his game is a lot more passive than McRoberts is, and it just doesn't work. Like, it's a cog that does not fit in that machine, and the machine doesn't run quite as well. Having said that, I think the biggest disappointment was Detroit. So I feel like coming into the season, a lot of people were thinking in the Van Gundy era, he would figure out what to do with all that talent, and then he would get them into the playoffs this year. And it didn't work out. I mean, it's one thing to say, okay, he had to deal with Josh Smith. Great, he got rid of him. So they had, I think it was a 13-game losing streak, which was the culmination of the Josh Smith era. And then they had a really good run where Brandon Jennings was at the peak of his powers, and they were starting to look like they were going to sneak into the playoffs. Jennings gets hurt. They make the trade for Reggie. Reggie comes in, and he has some success, but they still had another double-digit losing streak in late February into March. And it's like, looking at that team, I would have expected all things that they went through, considering all things they went through, I would have expected them to get closer to figuring out who they are and what they're going to be. But I feel like they're still in this weird kind of limbo. And to me, that's a big disappointment because it seemed like the Van Gundy era was going to get off to a more clear start than what it has.
I think you can owe that to the Brandon Jennings Achilles injury.
Yeah, that's a big part of it. But, I mean, they made a really good move to grab Reggie Jackson there, and he played pretty well, but they just didn't recreate what they had with Jennings. And, I mean, and now they have both of those guys. They don't know what they're going to get back with Jennings because they don't know exactly how long it's going to take him to come back. They have to deal with Reggie's contract, and they put themselves in a position like Reggie's former team is where he's a very admirable fill-in, but you don't commit to him to be your replacement, and now he's angry, and now you have to deal with him again. Like, I feel like Reggie's perhaps more of a curse than a gift for them. And on a different team, he'd probably be more gift than curse. But for what they have now, it's like, man, there's just there's such a lack of clarity with that franchise for me. And I feel like that's the most disappointing team and the most disappointing franchise for this season.
Along those same kind of lines, I think Phoenix has to be the most disappointing team.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Because that's a team that really expected to be in the playoffs this year, or at least make a better push for it. They made that move to pick up Isaiah Thomas in the offseason, and that just derailed everything that they were trying to do beforehand. That's such an interesting position for them to be in, coming off the surprise season that they had last year. Heading into this season, we're talking about our most exciting teams next, but heading into this season, they had to be one of the most excited teams about this season. They're like, oh man, we got Dragic, most improved. We got Bledsoe. That's a team that, again, talking about players that they missed, Channing Frye did a lot of things for them last year that wasn't quite replaced by the Morris brothers, right?
No, they weren't.
Replaced a little bit, but not quite the same that Channing Frye brought. Then they tried that 3-guard system that just didn't have the same amount of success that the 2-guard system did.
No, it was a disaster.
As a result of that, they ended up losing 2 of their guards. And they end up getting Brandon Knight, who they claim, we got the best player out of that. We got rid of Dragic, we got rid of Thomas, we pick up Knight. Guess what? We got the best player out of that. Knight's good. I don't think he's as good as Goran Dragic. But again, he didn't exactly work out the same, and then he got hurt.
Yeah.
So they went from 48 wins last season and just barely missing the playoffs last season to, finishing below 500 this year, falling out of the playoff race with about a month to go or so.
Yep.
And they got to be disappointed because they don't know what they're doing next season now. Knight's in the same position that Reggie Jackson is in with Detroit.
Yeah.
You know, they lost Dragic, they lost Thomas, and they could potentially lose Knight. And a franchise that we thought was on a rise is suddenly got a ton of question marks around it.
Yeah. I'd like to interject a question mark for you. How important do you think Alex Len is to the future of the Suns?
Oh, he's extremely important.
Okay.
Yeah. He has to play well for them. I mean, Plumlee did a lot of good things for them last season, Miles Plumlee, right? And this season he didn't quite have the same impact, which is why he lost his job to Alex Len.
Yeah.
And Alex Len didn't perform up to those expectations either. I mean, he had a good run, but then he kind of fell apart too.
What do you think Len's ceiling is? Who do you project him as? What's the best hope and what's the worst likelihood?
I haven't seen him play enough to really say what is his best hope. You know, if they can get Robin Lopez out of Alex Len, I think they'd be happy.
That'd be good. That'd be good. My worry is that he ends up being a little bit more like Alexis Ajinka.
He's got that body type. I mean, tall, long, lean.
But Ajinka is only good in doses. You know, he's not going to be a starter.
That's true. You know, actually, their biggest hope would be for Len to somehow figure out how to be Rudy Gobert.
Oh, yes.
That's the one.
Power. Yeah.
Oh, we'll talk about Gobert pretty soon, man. That guy, his ceiling is way up there. Hey, thanks for joining us, Lamont. We missed you for a little bit there.
Yeah.
So, which team do you think should be disappointed about their 2014-15 season?
You just covered Phoenix. Those are all self-inflicted wounds.
Yeah.
You know, the other two candidates that I had would be one would be Miami. We haven't even talked about Miami. Of course, we all know LeBron left, and they were playing really well. They were playing okay. And then at the All-Star break, they at the trade deadline they bring in Goran Dragic. You know, they have Hassan Whiteside. Dwayne Wade was playing really well. Chris Bosh was playing really well. They had a pretty good starting five, and we're set to at least make the bottom half of the playoffs, and then Chris Bosh with the blood clot has to miss the rest of the season. They're out of the playoffs. So to go from 4 straight finals appearances, winning 2 of those, to missing the playoffs altogether, you've got to be extremely disappointed in that.
Yeah.
And none of that was self-inflicted.
That's a really interesting term, that self-inflicted, because I feel like we talk about disappointments in terms of what is self-inflicted, like you're saying, Lamont. And I feel like there's also the element of the things that you can't plan for, like those injuries. And I feel like you put those together and, like, man, you just kind of see how things got so bad. Like, who would have predicted Chris Bosh's heart issue, man? Such a devastating thing.
What's more interesting about the Heat is that, Chris Bosh's injury or health problems impacted their season and was a big reason they missed the playoffs.
Yeah.
But they still had a chance.
They did. Yeah.
So going back to that self-inflicted, they ended the season horribly. And that race for the final 2 spots in the East came down like it was a war of attrition. Like, who's going to lose the least? Yeah. And they could have been there. They were there. They were locked into that 7 seed, and then they lost like 5 games in a row, and that took them right out of the chase. So even with Bosh's injury, even with Hassan Whiteside getting suspended for multiple games, even with Goran Dragic taking a little bit of time to really feel his way onto that team, because he struggled a little bit this year in Phoenix and the transition to Miami didn't take hold quickly. It took a little bit of time. They were still there, and they had an opportunity to still make the playoffs. Sure, it wouldn't have been as good a season as they had last year, but I don't think many people were expecting much from them this season, and they still could have made the playoffs. And still, they had a chance to play the Cavs in the first round of the playoffs, and they blew it. So yeah, I think they should absolutely be disappointed for things they couldn't control and things they still could control.
Yeah, agreed.
I like that answer, Lamont. They got it from both sides.
Yeah. Instead, we get
Lamont.
instead we
Come on, you thing, man.
instead we get Brooklyn.
Ugh.
Uh, and can we talk about the Celtics? Hang on. We're going to talk about the Celtics right now. So on the flip side of this coin of teams that are disappointed about their 2014-15 season, let's look at which teams are most excited about their 2015-16 season. And Lamont, I'll let you go ahead with that one first.
So, sticking with the Celtics, if you're a Boston Celtics, if you're a Celtics fan, you should be extremely excited for next season.
How the hell did they miss the playoffs?
They played really well down the stretch. They won a lot of games. They won enough games to get into that 7th spot. They've got one of the best young coaches, or the best young coach, however you want to say it. They've got a savvy general manager in Danny Ainge. They've got a ton of assets. They really like Marcus Smart. They really like Avery Bradley. We'll see what happens with Isaiah Thomas. And they've got a ton of draft picks that they can do something with. So their rebuild is well underway, and on the upside after trading away Paul Pierce, Kevin Garnett, and Rajon Rondo this season. So
It's
they're
amazing.
fine.
It's absolutely amazing. Since February 1st, I just looked this up, 24-13, best record in the Eastern Conference.
Wow.
How did they do that with that roster? When you look at that roster, I mean, they got a guy named Kelly Olynyk on their team playing big minutes. I have no idea how they did it. I didn't see enough Celtics games, particularly in this stretch here since February, to really understand what allowed them to be, that good.
I have heard a lot of people talk about the importance of the Jay Crowder addition, and that Boston somehow figured out, look, we don't have a big guy on this team that can be a rim protector, but we do have a bunch of similarly sized wing guys that we can play a very aggressively switching style of defense if we go smallish. And when they go smallish, you really can't get a good scheme of picks to get a guy open because they just switch on everything. And you're stuck at that point. Like, your screening option, your screening strategies is done. Then what are you going to do? Now you got 5 seconds left in the shot clock, and you don't necessarily get the best quality shot. I think it kind of starts with Jay Crowder in terms of what he allowed them to do. I mean, I don't know that that's the answer, but I feel like that's a part of it.
It's interesting.
I mean, the easy answer is that Brad Stevens is a really, 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 really good coach. He's gonna. I mean, if you think about it, they've undergone a ton of roster. We call it remakes, turnover. There you go, turnovers this season, and he's always going to have his team well prepared, and they're not going to be. From a preparation standpoint, game plan standpoint, they're not going to be handicapped at before tip off against anybody. Now, whether or not they have enough talent to win a game against Cleveland, probably not. But still, the future should be excited about their future in Boston.
And did I hear you bring up another team that should be excited about their future? Or did we just talk about Boston so far?
We just talked about Boston. I think we mentioned the Stifle Tower and Rudy Gobert. I think Utah should be decently excited about their future. They traded away Enes Kanter, who was basically dead weight for them, and unleashed Gobert. Derek Favors is really good. They had posts after the trade. They had either the they had a top 3 defense.
Oh yeah, I think number 1.
Right. Top three defense, and Quinn Snyder is settling into being a head coach. So we'll see. We'll see what the future is what the future holds for them. But things are looking sort of up for them.
I think they're looking more than sort of up. If you look at the collection of young talent that's on that team, and the coaching that they have there with Quinn Snyder, I think that their prospects are better than just about any other team in the league.
Whoa.
Because you think about, they have a wing guy in Hayward who's maybe not an all-star potential, but he's very solid.
Mm-hmm.
And then they've got their front court with Favors and Gobert. And Gobert looks like, I mean, what could you compare him to? Dikembe Mutombo?
Yeah, basically.
It's a good comparison right there.
So when you got that guy on your team, you got to be super excited. Super excited.
What do you think they do about
Sorry, go ahead, Tim.
I'm sorry, what do you think they do about their point guard situation?
I don't know.
It's possible.
Rajon Rondo? I don't know.
I was gonna suggest they make a phone call to Denver and see what's up with Ty Lawson.
That's better than Rajon Rondo. Absolutely.
Yeah.
So neither of you believe in either Trey Burke or Dante Exum?
Burke is promising, but I think both of those guys are backup guards.
Okay.
They don't get over the hump with those two guys, either one of those two guys starting at point guard for them.
Okay.
Unless, and here's another big one, right? We saw Gobert make that switch from Alexis Ajinka to Dikembe Mutombo in one season. Right. So if Dante Exum or Trey Burke could make a similar transformation next season, then that's something to talk about.
Okay.
But they got a lot of work to do. The other team that I think should be really excited about next year, and for one reason and one reason only, the New Orleans Pelicans. Because when you have Anthony Davis on your team, you better be excited.
Yeah, true. Does he stay? Is he going to play his whole career in the Bayou?
Oh, it's too soon to figure that out. I mean, this is his third season in the league, and now you're pretty much guaranteed to stay with the team that drafted you for 7 seasons. So we'll see. Hopefully not. Hopefully somehow he winds up at Los Angeles.
Yes. Sorry.
Those are dreams. Tim, who do you think should be most excited?
Milwaukee. Yesterday's game notwithstanding, I like a lot of things that are happening with that franchise. I think when they started this season, they had a roster that was secretly unwieldy. I mean, look, you had Larry Sanders, you had Zaza Pachulia, you had John Henson. I mean, who's going to get the minutes? Who's going to be your big guy? And what I think is interesting, I don't like what happened to Larry Sanders. I think it's very unfortunate. I hope he figures out how to right his ship, whatever right means for him. But you see what happened in the last month or two of the season when Zaza is your featured big guy. He puts up numbers, he performs well. He doesn't need to be a franchise player. You don't need him to be the brow. You just need him to perform. And maybe he compares somewhere between Nikola Vucevic and Pero Anton. His game is somewhere in between there, and that's enough for them because you look at what they're going to have with Giannis coming back when Jabari Parker gets healthy, and I love the chemistry those two had the first month of the season because you could just watch it happening. Like they were figuring out what each of them could do in the NBA and what each of them could do together, and it just looked like it was going to be devastating in a really beautiful way. I would have kept Brandon Knight myself because I liked him with those other two guys in particular. But I mean, I've been sold on Michael Carter Williams. I know he's regressed a lot from last year to this year, But I think there's a natural defensive mindset that's there. He has a strong aptitude for it if he's plugged into the right scheme. And I also think if anybody's going to fix his jump shot, it's going to be Jason Kidd. So, I mean, I'm high on them. If I was a fan of Milwaukee, and I know that their new visual identity is pretty dope, so that's a cool thing to have in your pocket as well. But I feel like I would be very excited about that franchise if I lived up there.
So there you have it. Utah, Boston, New Orleans, Milwaukee. All should be excited about 2015-16. We're about halfway through our final report for 2014-15. So I'd like to remind you that you're listening to the People's Court with Lamont, Tim, Chris. Again, hit us up on Twitter at People's Court FM or call us at 424-ADJOURN, 424-235-7633. And since we're about midway through our report, let's talk about mid-season acquisitions. Because I think those mid-season acquisitions had a big impact on the playoff landscape this season. So which of those acquisitions was the best? Tim, again, H before Peoples.
I'll start with the Cavaliers, and I'll go with the trade they made to grab the two Knicks. I like that one quite well. Shumpert and J.R. Smith. I think you see how good how productive J.R. Smith can be when he's on a good team. I mean, he won a Sixth Man of the Year that a couple years back when the Knicks were a playoff team and they actually looked like they could do some damage, maybe win a round or two. And Shumpert just seems like a perfect role player for them. I'm not sure that he ever is going to be a star, but man, he's such a multi-tool guy that does so many things well on the wing, and that's pretty much what you need. I feel like even with the Mozgov and Perkins acquisitions that the Cavs have kind of conceded that they just don't have rim protection, so they're going to put a lot of their defensive energy on the perimeter. And when you have those two guys, that's it. I mean, that's how you win a championship, when you have guys like that on your roster that can just do so many things and that fit so well into that particular scheme.
Yeah, those are certainly good pickups. And obviously, since picked those two guys up, their season has turned around. I don't know if you can equate it to those two guys specifically that turned their season around, but they definitely fit their scheme better than Dion Waiters.
Yeah. I mean, look, you got two guys versus one Dion Waiters. I mean, Waiters was always suspect on D. His scoring and offensive style never really fit alongside Kyrie and LeBron anyway. And, Shumpert and Smith, like, those guys are built to do exactly what Kyrie and LeBron need them to do.
Right. Lamont, which acquisition did you think was the best?
I'm gonna have to agree with all the moves that the Cavs made mid-season, bringing in Mozgov once Varejao went out, jettisoning Dion Waiters was that's addition by subtraction. Although I never believed in Dion Waiters. I still don't.
Okay.
Yeah, the guy's just awful. He's just awful. I like the moves that the Thunder did in getting rid of Kendrick Perkins, bringing in Enes Kanter. They got rid of Reggie Jackson. They have Kyle Singler now. Anthony Morrow was really good. Well, he wasn't a midseason pickup, but I think just going back to what we were talking about, what Durant's injury woes and Westbrook unleashed means, I think the Thunder will be fine. But for bringing J.R. Smith and Iman Shumpert to Cleveland, for all the reasons that Tim just went over, was great for them. And not
the Mozgov move was even more important than those two guys because he's a real center.
True.
And then he also gives them the flexibility of going small if they want, or you can put them on the bench and then go small. He gives them a lot more flexibility too. Again, the same things that Shumpert and Smith bring, just more flexibility. He gives them more flexibility in the front court than they had with Tristan Thompson as a result of the Varejao injury.
Yeah. It's weird because I feel like when I think about what rim protection means, it's just freaking shot blocking, basically, or the threat of shot blocking. And for me, I feel like I personally underrate the value of space eating as a form of rim protection because Mozgov is massive, and that dude doesn't have to jump 50 inches. He doesn't have to have tremendous timing or anything. He just by his sheer presence, he can do a little bit like what Andrew Bogut does, where he's in that space and he makes it really difficult for you to get and finish.
Yeah, I was going to say the same thing. Bogut is very similar. You don't think of Bogut too much as a shot blocker, but he's just tough to shoot over.
Yes.
So yeah, that 5-foot floater probably turns into a 9-foot floater with Bogut
Yeah.
there.
Yeah, true. Very true.
Those are much harder to hit. But yeah, Lamont, you brought up Enes Kanter, and we mentioned before, actually not before, but we're going to talk about pretty soon about players who needed to change the scenery. And Enes Kanter, I mean, that trade helped both Utah and Oklahoma City and Enes Kanter and Rudy Gobert. Like, by them getting rid of Kanter, it allowed Gobert to step into the starting lineup and get the minutes that he should be getting. Kanter going to OKC, suddenly he's dropping 2010 with regularity in those minutes without worrying about somebody who's behind him who's going to take his minutes. They couldn't figure out exactly how to use him in Utah. Now they're using him really well in OKC. It's a good move all around.
I have a question. So given that was such a comprehensively good move and so many different parties benefited from it, how exactly did that trade end with Enes Kanter being like the villain number one in Utah? Like, where did that animosity come from? Like, that doesn't make sense.
I don't think they appreciated what he did for them.
Yeah, I guess. You would think that everybody would be happy though, because everybody won. I don't know.
We're in this weird stage. At least I saw it. At least I saw it a little bit last night, in the Dallas-Houston game, where anytime a player has spent a few years with one team and then leaves for whatever reason, they have to get booed when they come back.
That's it. Huh. Okay.
I think it's just as simple as that.
Okay.
Well, especially if you get better when that guy leaves, like Josh Smith.
Yeah, true.
So, like, if you traded away a guy that wasn't beloved to begin with, and you get rid of him, and suddenly you're a better team without him, yeah, if that dude comes back, you're going to boo.
That makes sense. Makes total sense. It seems unfortunate, but it makes total sense.
Yeah.
Fans are finicky like that, though.
Uh-huh. They booed Chandler Parsons pretty loudly in Houston last night, and I don't know. I couldn't quite understand why.
Yeah, I mean, he was good for them.
That's
And the
a good
circumstance-
question.
And the
Well,
circumstance,
because he turned down their money. That's why.
they never really offered him.
Yeah.
They didn't. Yeah, the circumstances of him leaving was really weird. Anyways.
Okay.
Let's move on to the award season, because this is the time of the year where everybody's handing out MVPs and six-mans and Rookie of the Years. And now, not only is the NBA going to hand out all the awards, but the Players Union is going to hand out their own awards too. So they're going to do their own version of the awards, and I think that's going to happen sometime after the finals. Or maybe not, maybe before. I don't know when they're going to do it. But the players are going to vote on those as opposed to the media voting on the ones the NBA hands out. And it seems kind of redundant. Like, there's just so many awards coming out now. Not only that, but every single media outlet has to do their own awards. TNT is going to do their own awards. ESPN is going to do their own awards. Sports Illustrated, everybody's going to have their own picks for MVP and their own picks for Rookie of the Year and all of that stuff. And it's just, I feel like this time of year is just inundated with award talk. I don't know. How do you guys feel about it?
I think we could narrow it down to maybe 4 awards that really matter.
Okay.
So, or maybe 5. So the three
That's
that
a lot.
okay, so the three that you keep: coach of the year, MVP, and then defensive player of the year, and then the rest, like six man, most improved,
Yeah.
all rookie first, all rookie first and second teams. That's pretty much every rookie.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
that, you're gonna give it to every rookie that plays a decent amount of minutes is gonna make it.
Mhm.
You can probably get rid of the all rookie teams. Maybe keep rookie of the year, but yeah, coach of the year, MVP, defensive player of the year, and that's about it. I think that's all that matters.
It seems like at some point it becomes figure skating. Like we value subjectivity way more than we value actual freaking accomplishment. I mean, a team wins the most games. A team will win the championship. A player will score the most points. A player will grab the most rebounds. Like those are things that are just knowable and improvable. You know, context matters, of course, because maybe one guy only plays 60 games and he technically not eligible or simply can't grab as many rebounds. But still, these things are knowable and provable. And it's like we value the things that are not demonstrable because we want to argue over stuff that may or may not matter, but we just want to argue. I feel like that's really what's driving all the extra awards.
I like that though. Now that you mention it that way, I mean, one of the fantastic things about sports is that everybody's opinion is somehow valid,
Yeah, yeah, true.
right? So this is just another one of those things for us to debate about. But I like what you've done, Tim, in that you've created your own awards that have nothing to do with most valuable, nothing to do with rookie of the year, nothing to do with how many points you scored or how many blocks you got. Just random awards. And I like these. So let's do these. These are Tim Atkins awards.
Okay, I guess
So I'll
have
let
to-
you start, man. What awards do you want to hand out first?
what do we have here? Well, let's start with two that are kind of brand new, like we thought of at like 4 o'clock in the morning last night. And the first one is called the Domestic Tranquility Award. And it's incredibly local. You can see behind me, the Liberian girl and I, we live in a one-bedroom, and that means there's a living room and there's a bedroom. And when we're both in the apartment, usually one of us is in one room and one of us is in the other, unless we're doing something together, in which case we're doing it in the same room. So, you know, a lot of times we're on the couch watching a movie together, but for the times that I'm trying to watch the game, she's not interested in that. So if she wants to be on the couch, you know, she needs me to be so engrossed in whatever the thing is that I'm watching that I'm completely separated from her so that she can sit on the couch and read her book in peace and quiet. And I asked her about awards last night, and she says, so I want to give an award to the player who caused you to be so transfixed in his performance, you know, that it allowed me to read my book in peace and quiet. And she said the guy, and she doesn't follow the game at all, but she's heard me talk about it, different players enough times. She says the one player that I know that did that the most was Stephen Curry. So for that reason, I would like to give Stephen Curry the Domestic Tranquility Award for being, you know, such a mesmerizing player that I was able to watch the game and do my thing, and the Liberian girl was able to read her book and do her thing, and we were both, you know, 4 or 5 feet apart, and we were in the same world, but we were also in our own little universes simultaneously. So congrats to you, Stephen Curry, Domestic Tranquility Award nominee.
I mean, I don't have the same domestic situation that you do, Tim.
Yeah, we know, of course.
But what this translates to me is essentially the most watchable player.
Yeah.
And Steph Curry is right up there. But the most watchable player for me, the guy who I look forward to watching to the most this season, it was Russell Westbrook. And that guy, he's a force of nature. And I know that's a cliche, but I just love watching him play basketball. Like him and Steph Curry are like 1A and 1B right now of my most watchable players. And you pick Curry, so rather than shine on Curry all this time, let's pick somebody else, and I'll go with Russell Westbrook.
Okay, good call.
Lamont, do you have a Domestic Tranquility Award winner?
It's down to the same two players that the two of you just mentioned. So I'll just go in alphabetical order on this one and say Steph Curry.
Yeah.
For all the reasons that Tim just said.
Can we just have a moment to talk about that play that he made against Clippers?
Oh, yeah.
Where he dribbled through a sea of Clippers, had his back to the basket, found himself behind the three-point line, and said, I'm just going to turn around and shoot it. And so he did, and just drained it, and just walked down the other across that court. That was the most incredible play, I think, this season.
One of the things I love about his game is, like, it's completely fundamentally unsound. Like, you're always taught, like, you release your shot, you follow through, you complete your form, and then you look at what's happening and you figure out how you can get your own offensive rebound, or in some cases, your job is to get back and be the defensive player, but mostly you're thinking offensive rebound. He doesn't look to anything. He lets it fly and just starts walking back. Like he's just finished paying his tab at the bar and he's going upstairs at the hotel to go to sleep. Like he's that kind of calm and completely satisfied with everything that has happened before that moment. It's amazing.
And he's got sneaky good. Well, maybe it's not sneaky anymore. But when he came into the league, I didn't realize how good his handle was.
Oh,
Well,
yeah.
he's like a weird amalgamation of Pete Maravich and his father.
Yeah.
It's so fun to watch. So what's the next award in the Tim Atkins Wars?
Okay, so this is the second of two awards. It's the Charles Barkleyist Award. And I was thinking about this while I was watching some pregame stuff for the Warriors when they were showing footage of Draymond Green defending all these players of different heights, different positions that play in different parts of the floor. And they were basically trying to show you just how versatile he is as a defender. And in watching that, it occurred to me, like, I'm 6'4". Draymond Green is not much taller than me. He might actually be my height. I'm not sure. And I know that Charles Barkley is in the same boat. I mean, they're both a million times better athlete than I ever was. But they're both so unique. And their size relative to their achievement, they just seem completely illogical. Like, you wouldn't ever expect a 6'4", 6'5" guy to lead the NBA in rebounding, but Charles Barkley did that. Just like you wouldn't expect a 6'4", 6'5" guy to be the defensive fulcrum of arguably the best defense in the NBA. And what it means for him to be that fulcrum is that he guards every position on the floor, regardless of who it is or what exactly their role is on their team. And I know that we've always accepted that Charles Barkley is so unique that there'll never be another Charles Barkley because nobody will be able to do that. But I feel like in terms of just sheer illogicality, like Draymond Green is there. Like he's the most illogical player in the NBA today in terms of what he can do with what he actually has. So I would like to give him the Charles Barkleyist Award.
Sounds like you created an award just to give to Draymond
Yeah,
for his performance this season.
basically.
I like it, though. I don't know who else fits that mold.
Okay, it's got to be illogical.
Yeah, exactly. So I'm just going to give this award to LeBron James because you can give him any award that you could possibly come up with.
Pretty much.
Yeah. He's 6'8". He's faster than you. He's bigger than you. He's stronger than you. He's LeBron James.
Faster than you. Sorry, I couldn't resist.
Lamont?
I'm gonna give this one to Russell Westbrook. Not that he fits the criteria, but just simply for the fact that he broke his face on a Thursday and then was playing again on Saturday,
Yeah.
putting up another triple-double with
Yeah.
a broken face. So I've never seen anything like that before, so we're going to give it to Westbrook.
Yeah. That's very
But when
Charles
you think
Barkley.
about it, Westbrook really does fit the mold for this award too. When you can consider the fact that he's getting triple doubles at his size and his position, which is 6'3" at a point guard. Most point guards that get triple doubles are the taller guys, like Jason Kidd was 6'5". Magic Johnson 6'9". It's those taller guys that typically get triple doubles because they're in position to get more rebounds, and then they handle the ball enough so they can get enough assists, like LeBron James. Westbrook is able to do this consistently from the point guard position at 6'3". So he does kind of fit that mold where he's too short to be doing the things that he's doing on the basketball court.
Yeah. Well, I mean, he's. I think Westbrook's just an alien. I don't think he's human. I mean, he came from some other planet to destroy our planet and do so in some kind of benevolently entertaining way, and I applaud him for that.
He should be applauded for that.
Yeah.
You're saying Russell Westbrook could be a Space Jam character without having something inhabitate him?
Yes, exactly.
There you go.
Yes. He's a monster. But he's a human being as well. Yeah. Also logical. I don't understand it, but I love it.
All right, Tim. Next up in your awards.
Oh yeah, so these are actually a couple of things that Lamont and I talked about. We worked on these in the middle point of the season. The in keeping with the court theme, the most deserving of parole, and that one was quite simply about somebody that we wanted to put into a better situation because they were in a bad situation pretty much through no fault of their own. And for that, I'd like to go with Boogie Cousins on this one. I've always been a fan of his. I think he's got a bad rap because he was a young guy. He kind of had to find his way, and I think people expected too much of him too soon, and they didn't allow him to figure it out for himself. And I think he has figured it out for himself with some help from some really important people. I hear Chris Webber is kind of a mentor to him. I just don't think Sacramento's ever going to figure it out. I'd like to put Boogie Cousins in a better place. I don't know where that is. All the speculation says some of it says Orlando. I've heard Boston because of the number of picks that Boston has. I'm sure that there's a better situation out there for him than Sacramento.
Yeah, that's an interesting award to consider. Lamont, who do you think is most deserving of parole?
On the fly, let's see if I can make my case for this guy. Dwight Howard might be most deserving of parole.
Oh,
He has fallen out of everybody's graces. Again, using the term we coined earlier, most of it is self-inflicted.
yeah.
From 6 years ago, he's had some injuries, and it's to the point now that we don't like him anymore, so we don't recognize that Dwight Howard was really, really good in the playoffs last season. Dwight Howard was really good even despite his minutes restrictions. He was pretty good last night as well, and he's still a really, really, really good player despite his ceiling being lowered due to his back and all that stuff. I think it's time we just kind of ease off of him and go from our dislike of him leading to disrespecting what he can do on the court. At least we can objectively evaluate the player he is on the court and forget about the other stuff.
So maybe he needs to switch positions with Boogie.
Maybe.
Strong case, man. Well done.
I think kind of similarly, Kevin Love could really use a change of scenery.
Oh, okay.
That situation in Cleveland hasn't worked out, I don't think, for Cleveland or Love the way that they expected it to. And, maybe that's just not the right situation for him. He's turned into a spot-up shooter. And we know he's much better than that.
What if you took Kevin Love and Dwight Howard and put them on the Knicks?
Neither of them could play. Well, I shouldn't say that neither of them could play, but I don't think they go well, the three of them together, Love, Howard, and Anthony.
Would be interesting, though.
Well, think about this. Okay, let's throw a hypothetical. So let's suppose that the Knicks, they end up with, say, Willie Cauley-Stein, right? Or Karl Anthony Towns, either one. Somebody that can actually, a young guy that you know is going to be a good defender, not Okafor. So suppose you have, a four-person front line that has Howard, Love, Carmelo, and the kid, whichever one of the kids it is. And you got you're basically trying to install the triple post offense, and what would be more suitable to display Kevin Love's full body of skills than the triangle offense? And that guy's perfect for it. He's not tall enough to be a good defender, to be your defensive anchor. But if you had those four guys, you could run a minutes restriction on all of them, so that you're kind of allowing the guys that have been injured, like Carmelo and Dwight, to play a minimal minutes but be maximally effective, to extend their careers a little bit, and figure out different combinations of these guys so that you put them on the court depending on who the other team's matchup is. How scary would that 4-person front court be?
It would be scary.
No.
It would be scary from a hypothetical standpoint. But are we really rooting for the Knicks to be good? Isn't it better when the Knicks are bad? Isn't it more fun for everybody else when the Knicks are bad?
Well, true. I like Phil Jackson and Derek Fisher. I can't root against those guys.
If anything, I think that experiment would be interesting, because then you'd finally get to see Dwight Howard in the triangle, which we didn't get to see in LA.
Yeah.
Because,
True.
Jim Buss and Mitch Kupchak and whoever it was that decided to not hire Phil Jackson as their head coach when they had Dwight Howard. So that I'd root for that just to see that.
Okay.
And our final Tim Atkins Award.
Again, this is another one Lamont and I worked out. This is the what was our acronym for this? It's the MDG, the most demonstrably guilty. And for this one, we're basically looking at a person who committed the greatest sins in the course of this NBA season and is somehow deserving of some type of punishment. And for me, it's Randy Whitman. I mean, I'm here in D.C., so I'm exposed to the Wizards a little bit more than the ordinary person. But I just feel like, man, they backslid so much this year compared to what everybody expected of them after last year's playoff performance. And it was just so disappointing to watch their offense be so bad for so many stretches. They're clearly a middle-of-the-pack team in the East, right? In the East. And they're going to be that as long as they keep their team intact and they stay relatively healthy. But is that enough? You're wasting John Wall if that's all you're doing, because that guy is good enough to get you a championship if you just plug him in the right situation. And Randy Whitman, I don't think he has enough imagination as an offensive coach. I think the defensive schemes are there, but I don't know if that's to be credited to him or somebody else. And there's been enough coaching talent come through Washington in the last couple of years. They let Sam Cassell go, and it certainly looked like they were teeing him up to be the head coach at some point. They got a guy that was a player development specialist. I think he was Kevin Durant's high school head coach. His name's actually David Adkins, same as my uncle. Although he's not my uncle. So that's who I give it to is Randy Whitman. I think he's the most demonstrably guilty of really sad, mediocre things, and that to me is a really grave sin.
And I find that funny because they extended him last season after they got back to the playoffs. So,
yeah.
And they won yesterday, so that's.
But they're not. That's it. They can win this round, but then what?
It's kind of the situation that the Warriors had with Mark Jackson last season.
Yeah, kind of.
They were really good. They won 50 games. But they felt that Jackson was still holding them back. That they couldn't unleash their offense with Jackson as their head coach. And that's what you're saying with Whitman. Yeah. They can't unleash John Wall with Whitman as their head coach.
No, there's some personnel issues. They tried to replace Trevor Ariza with Paul Pierce, and Pierce is going to be tremendous for the rest of the playoffs. We know that. But in the regular season, he was a little bit inconsistent. Some of it may have been his age. Some of it may have been a question of whether they wanted to give him a lot of minutes or give Otto Porter a lot of minutes. There was also the issue of Bradley Beal's injury, which shook the team up a bit. The personnel had to shuffle around and fill that gap, and they didn't have a good backup to fill that gap. So it was very, very strange. So there were things that were outside of Whitman's control. But being the head guy, it seemed as if his peak is what they did last year. So what they essentially did, the franchise chose to extend Randy Whitman's peak as being a mediocre Eastern Conference team was like, well, that's what's here, and that's what John Wall, that's going to be his career. Like, oh, that's sad. That's just sad.
Well put. Lamont, who do you have for your MDG?
I'm gonna nominate Lance Stevenson,
Oh,
who a season ago, or at least up until last February, was a borderline All-Star. Was the second best playmaker behind Paul George for an Indiana Pacers team that went to the conference finals. And he was supposed to do similar things, at least help add more playmaking to a Charlotte Hornets team that went to the playoffs. And it didn't work. His shooting, which was only average at best, regressed. He didn't fit in with Kemba Walker, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And pretty much we all stopped talking about him after he went out. He missed some games with a groin injury, and then nobody talked about him again. And Charlotte's out of the playoffs.
yeah, that's pretty guilty.
Yeah. And just like that's there's no argument there. Like he has no case.
Yeah.
He walks into the room. Yeah, guilty.
Automatic.
Yeah.
Case closed.
On those lines, Tim, just like you went with your local head coach, the guy who's running this ship in DC, and I got to go with the guy who's running this ship here in Los Angeles, Byron Scott.
Yeah.
And not that the team performed below expectations, because nobody expected the Lakers to win a lot of games this year. The goal for the team is to keep their top 5 pick.
Yeah.
But some of the things that he did as a coach, the things that he said, why would anybody want to play for this guy?
Exactly.
Every single player under the bus. He is clearly stuck in, I don't know, like 1997 in terms of how he wants to coach basketball. And he lets Kobe do whatever the hell he wants.
Yeah.
Just go away.
He's a caretaker coach. I think everybody knows that. The question for me from the time he was hired is, okay, so who follows him? Who are they going to get to be the guy that actually gets the Lakers back to championship level? I don't know. I mean, are you guys rooting for anybody in particular?
Brad Stevens?
You know who would have been a good guy for this, actually, who's having some success, as you both noted earlier in the show, is Quinn Snyder, former Laker assistant.
Fantastic.
He would have been
Like,
great.
that's the type of guy. Brad Stevens, Quinn Snyder, Mike Budenholzer in Atlanta. Those are the types of guys that I was hoping the Lakers would hire. Guys that hadn't been head coaches before, but look like they were going to be really good coaches.
Yeah.
Byron Scott's been a head coach. His peak was taking Jason Kidd and those Nets to the finals 2 seasons in a row. Since then, he's been a really bad coach in the league. Really bad. You know what you're going to get with him. And I think that's kind of why the Lakers wanted him, because Kobe would know, have some connection with this head coach.
Yeah.
But in terms of shaping the future, I mean, that's not the guy.
No.
That's not the guy that you get. Whereas a guy like
a
guy like Brad Stevens does that.
I've kind of got my eye on Luke Walton. I like, he was always very well known as a great locker room guy, great teammate when he played for the Lakers. And, him coaching with Steve Kerr, like that's a Phil Jackson family tree, although obviously you could argue that Kerr is kind of from Pop as well. But I think with Luke Walton, like, he's a younger guy that, he was always a great basketball mind, even back when he was a kid playing for Arizona. Obviously a great basketball lineage with his father, Bill. And I wonder, like, is that guy going to turn out to be, like, a really inspiring possible head coach? And if so, like, could the Lakers get him at some point? I don't know. It's just speculation, but I wonder about it.
I mean, it's the same kind of thing that we dealt with Brian Shaw, right?
Yeah.
And whether or not. See, I think management wants to get a name. They want to get a name that people know and recognize as coach.
I would.
And Luke
Man,
Walton, I mean, yeah, people recognize the name, but not really as a coach.
Yeah, he's
You know,
very
Bruce
young. I
Snyder,
mean, I don't know.
Brian Shaw.
I don't know how long it would take Luke to get to a point where he was ready to be a head coach. I would have been so cool with Derek Fisher being there. That would have been great. That's a done deal, though.
Right, so there you have it. The Domestic Tranquility Award, Charles Barkleyist Award, most deserving of parole, most demonstrably guilty. We're going to bring these back for next season because I like these awards.
We could actually, since we talked about the Lakers, that's my Laker Rothko. I don't know if that should be like, if we should give this as this is the trophy for all of the awards.
For every single one of them, right?
But I decided that I was going to paint. This is a year or so ago, and I was looking at a bunch of Mark Rothko paintings. Like, yeah, I could totally do that, except it's hard. It is really hard. So this is my attempt at a Laker Rothko painting, and that's for the awards, I guess. So to those guys.
I think it matches some of Westbrook's outfits.
Yeah, it does.
I think it does. At least a couple of them.
Yeah.
Well, before this episode gets long in the tooth, we've talked about the 2014-15 season here for an hour, and I think that's a good place to leave it. Is there anything else that you guys want to bring up in relation to this season, next season, or anything and beyond that we can talk about real quick?
The league and the union agreed to start testing for HGH.
Great, fantastic.
That's all.
Do either of you think that's a real problem, though?
We're gonna find out. We're gonna find out. The league has said for a number of years that they're not like football and baseball. They don't have this problem. Well, now we're all gonna find out and see.
Yeah.
We might find out that whatever allowed Russell Westbrook to have this performance this season, to come back from getting his face caved in and dropping a triple-double in the next game, might have something to do with that. So, hopefully not.
What's the harm that HGH does? Why is HGH bad?
We decided several times over the last 100 years that drugs are bad, always bad.
That's it. That's all. There's no like.
And it's been that way ever since.
Wow. Wow.
And not only that drugs are bad, I mean, we've had this conversation before about steroids and those sorts of things, that, there's a stigma that using these things gains an unfair advantage. So if you do them, you're cheating. And nobody wants to be a cheater. I don't think it's cheating, but people do.
But you know what? Actually, I want to interject this thought, and I apologize if this caused it to go long. One of the things that I really am going to remember from this season is that there was this great stylistic debate between whether you wanted James Harden to be your MVP or Stephen Curry to be your MVP. And for me, the fundamental difference between those two players is that everything that Curry does is really about imagination, whereas everything that Harden does is really about cunning. I mean, there's no more cunning move in the NBA than that Euro step, and there's probably nobody better at that than Harden. And I feel like when you talk about cheating and rules and like the morality that gets associated with the game and unfair advantages in particular, like outside of sports, so many of our systems here in the United States, financial institutions for one, they're basically set up so that the game is rigged, and that if you can figure out how the game might be rigged in your favor, God bless you. Use your cunning, go capitalize, go take advantage of, be an opportunist, and awesome, great, good for you. You got the dream. Wrap your hands around it and strangle it. But like, why is it that like if there's no obvious harm, right? Like if there's no obvious harm done, why is an advantage viewed as unfair when all of our other systems are based on advantages that really aren't fair at all? Like, why do we pick this thing to stand up for?
That's a really good question, Tim. The poster child for HGH is Barry Bonds.
Yeah.
And no, I'm not going to I'm not going to use the race card because Lance Armstrong fell victim to this too. I don't know, Tim. That's a really good question. It's a really good way to phrase it because, like you said, not just the financial institution, but I mean taxes. I mean the way the tax code is written is all about trying to take advantage where you can, so you can pay the least amount of taxes.
I mean, man, if you hang around business people, one of the words you hear most often is exposure. You know, and that's the thing. Like everybody's trying to limit their exposure to this stuff, and taxes are probably the best example or best application of that. But I mean, man, you look at our criminal justice system and the Ferguson report that just came out. Like a whole entire specific group of people is basically being used as a revenue source, and they're being criminalized at the same time. Like that's not an unfair advantage. Like why do we not ride for that? Except but we're all excited about HGH and whatever. I mean, it just seems weird. We just picked the wrong thing, man.
It's a distraction.
I guess.
I mean, that's what entertainment is, and we talked about earlier about it's great that sports give us all a valid opinion.
Yeah.
And that's kind of what entertainment does. It's pop culture, and it reaches that lowest common denominator. It's easy for anybody to see that, oh yeah, that guy did something that was against the rules, and as a result, he did something that nobody else was able to do.
Change the rules.
We see it on television, right? Absolutely. I agree. The rules are stupid. But when that stuff takes place in front of us and not in courtrooms, although some court cases are televised, but nobody watches that stuff. Well,
right.
Maybe that's not true. But in boardrooms and places where people don't have this type of access to, maybe that's why people are more up in arms about HGH than the fact that it's, like you said, the court system is one of those things that's not necessarily easy to gain, but it's not about innocent or guilty in the court system. It's about how you can manipulate the law to get that reasonable doubt. Right?
Yeah.
It's interesting.
I don't know, man. I favor imagination, man. I just can't, like, cunning is fine. That's fine. But like, it just seems like it's very selective, and I don't know how HGH works, but I remember the furor about steroids, and the one thing that Barry Bonds always hung his hat on was like, look, steroids do not improve your hand-eye coordination. They don't improve, like, they help your fast twitch muscles heal more quickly, but they don't make them faster or more twitchier. Like, you have to do that on your own. So like the idea of an unfair advantage, it seems like an incomplete story. That's why whenever Kobe and whoever else went to Germany, like, I don't know what those guys did over there, what choices they made about their bodies, but they came back and they could do amazing things. I don't know what LeBron did for 2 weeks when he wasn't playing for the Cavs, but when he came back, he could do amazing things. Like, if you are willing to make a choice to put yourself in harm's way in order to do something amazing to become richer and more successful, like, that something about that seems fundamentally American. Like, that doesn't seem like cheating, making that gamble. Now, if you're doing harm to someone else, like, you have to chop somebody's arm off in order for you to have an arm to start with, that seems bad. That seems pretty obviously bad, but some of this other stuff with various drugs and treatments, I don't get it. It seems more like a choice that's available to everyone, or could be available to everyone if we refocused our moral lens a little bit to be, to have some intellectual rigor as opposed to just operating all on, the feeling of the moment.
I agree. And we're going to go a little bit deeper into this than I thought we would. But to me, it's kind of like taking tests, right, in school.
Okay.
People who succeed are typically one of things. They just naturally understand the material better. Or number two, they study their butts off so that they can understand the material better, right? So what if you found out that the person who studied his butt off drank 12 cups of coffee so that he could study longer?
Yeah.
And so because I operate with, say, just water, I can only study for 4 hours because after that, I'm going to crash and go to sleep. Well, that dude took 12 coffees, so he's studying for 8 hours. He studied twice as long, and guess what? He did better on the test than I did. Did he cheat?
Yeah.
I don't think
no. I mean, because like, look, I don't know coffee. Like, suppose it was Red Bull. Like, there's various things about Red Bull and drinks like that where, like, they cause you to gain weight. They mess with your digestive system. Like, I think they're so acidic that they, long-term intense exposure to that kind of substance in your body, like it can have an adverse effect on various things that happen internally for you. So you're making a choice to put yourself in harm's way to pursue some particular goal. Like, you made the choice. If you, Chris, are saying, yeah, I don't want to do that to my body, I'm sticking with water. Like, I mean, you made the choice and you did what you did, and this other person put themselves in harm's way. Like, are they doing harm to you necessarily?
No, absolutely not. And that's what I don't understand about this HGH thing. There's not a classroom in America that will sit there and say, nobody's allowed to take Red Bull before taking this test. It'd be ludicrous.
Yeah. I guess, for me, if there was something about HGH, like, look, I know enough about steroids. Like, I've known cancer patients that get steroids prescribed to them by their doctors. Like, steroids have a positive application. There's a purpose for those things. And with HGH, like, is that a thing that's all bad? If it turns out that that's all bad, and the point of the league saying we don't want anybody using this is that they want to establish a bar that their athletes cannot exceed, because they don't want their athletes 10, 20 years from now to be crumbling human beings. Like, if the issue is that the league is looking out for the safety of their athletes, I can get on board with that, because I think that's a completely separate angle than the idea of somebody cheating or not cheating. But I just don't know enough about HGH. I don't know even how to begin answering that kind of question.
And I think the original ban for steroids had a lot to do with, well, maybe not a lot, but it had some to do with the health angle.
Yeah.
You guys like Lyle Alzado, maybe not guys, that's the only example I can think of. Lyle Alzado, who took steroids and had a really bad health problem and died as a result of that. Does HGH have an example like that? Are there health concerns about HGH? I haven't heard any.
I'd love to see Henry Abbott dive into that. I feel like that's a story he and True Hoop would be really well positioned to tell.
And maybe they have.
Yeah, they might have. But yeah, that's just it. Like, I want to see these athletes do amazing things. I don't want them to kill themselves to do it. If they are willing to take on an acceptable level of risk, like, they all take on acceptable levels of risk every time they step on a court, really. And if they can define that, if the athletes as individuals, if the league itself, if the players union, if everybody can agree what the minimally acceptable levels of risk are, I don't really care about the cheating. I mean, I care about the safety. I care about imagination and amazing things, but cheating seems silly, man.
To call it cheating seems extremely silly to me.
Yeah. I agree. Yeah. Thank you for that.
And here we go. I think one of our favorite topics on the People's Court has always been this steroid conversation. And we're going to end 2014-15 with the steroid conversation. Tim, thanks for joining us, man. It's been great having you here for this final report card.
Yeah. Hey, didn't I see that you and Lamont were on a different kind of championship-winning team? Didn't you got your league that you guys play in?
Yeah, we play in a rec league every Sunday, and our team won, I think it's winter season, We won our division championship.
Yeah. So yeah, we got multiple championships to celebrate here.
Yeah, that's right. So I'm having a good year.
Yeah, bring it back, bring it back. He lost Lamont, but he continues to be a champion. Just, his internet connection might not be, but he's.
Yeah, so thanks for tuning into our 2014-15 final report. I'm not going to go into all the topics that we talked about. You'll just have to rewind and check it out yourself. But be sure to check us out on Twitter at People's Court FM, excuse me. We're going to have more court cases throughout the summer. And of course, long form podcasts like this throughout the season, next season. Check us out on our website, http://thepeoplescourt.fm. Hit up Tim at capital underscore T.
Yes, sir.
On Twitter.
Yes, sir. That's me.
You can call us 424-ADJOURN. That's 424-235-7633. Just be on the lookout for everything that we'll do and enjoy the playoffs. It should be good. Enjoy them.
Yeah.
So thank you for joining us. Court is adjourned.